I'm Vin Caponigro, and I was one of IPCNY's remote artists in residence for Unfinished New Prints Winter 2022. I am an interdisciplinary artist and educator, and I currently live on colonized Wampanoag in Massachusetts land, so-called South Boston, where I also run a small press called Snakehair. The piece that I had in the Unfinished exhibition was an installation that I had made called Spectral Evidence. Spectral evidence is testimony that a person's spirit or spectral shape is able to appear in a dream or a vision at a time when their physical body is elsewhere. It was used in court proceedings in colonial New England to convict numerous people of murder and witchcraft, including during the Salem witch trials. The work that I created during my remote residency is titled La Punta de la Dita, and it's a 3-part project about labor exploitation and the non-consensual removal of natural materials from the earth and their return. It is a small edition of screen prints, a ritual performance, and a book. I focused on 3 major industries: coal, slate, and silk, that emerged in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And relied really heavily on the exploitation of the labor of recent immigrants to the so-called United States. A little bit of history for context. The town that I grew up in is called Easton, Pennsylvania. It's originally Lenape land. Most of my family arrived in the early 1900s from Calabria, Campania, and Sicily to work in the silk mills, the lace factories, the railroads. Anthracite coal has the highest carbon content and fewest impurities of any type of coal, and geologically the largest and most concentrated anthracite deposit in the world is in northeastern Pennsylvania. Just east to that is the Slate Belt, and before the railroads were built, the canals on the Lehigh and Delaware rivers made it possible to transport that coal, iron, slate, ore, and natural cement by mule. In the early 1900s, textile producers intentionally built factories in northeastern Pennsylvania to exploit the labor of women and children, many of whom were part of large families dependent on the uncertain and inadequate wages that men working in the mines and quarries were receiving. The first part of the project is a collection of 3 small editions of screen prints. One related to coal, one related to Eastonite, and one related to slate and lace. The coal print has a photograph of the Susquehanna River in January of 1959, when a tunnel was illegally dug under a subcontracted anthracite mine without proper safety precautions, which created a hole in the riverbed, causing the river to flood into all of these interconnected mine shafts. It took 3 days to plug the hole in the riverbed, which was done by dumping railroad cars and other debris into this whirlpool that was formed by the water draining into the mines. Amedeo Pancati was a miner who survived the Knox mine disaster by climbing up an abandoned air shaft 50 feet up. Because of him, 69 other miners were able to escape through that air shaft. And according to his loved ones, he frequently described his escape as con la punta de la dita, or by the fingertips, which is where the name for the project comes from. There's also an image of a souvenir that was given by my great aunt to my nonna and then passed along to me, of a mule carved out of anthracite coal. This print I made by actually grinding coal that I purchased from a mine in northeast Pennsylvania. I ground it by hand, and then I mixed it with a transparent base to create an ink. The second print is documentation of 3 pieces of Eastonite, which is a type of green mica that's found only in Easton, Pennsylvania. Those 3 pieces I purchased on the internet, photographed for the print, and then reburied in the quarry. The third screen print is a collection of watercolor monoprints that were created from actual pieces of slate that I purchased from Bangor, Pennsylvania, and then printed with a lace pattern from the curtains that my nonna had hanging in her home, the material of which came from the textile factory where she worked for many decades. The second part of the project was a ritual that I filmed at 3 locations near my hometown. the first of which was ringing rocks, where I again wore a piece of Nani's lace over my head, but this one I had dyed gray, and I hit the rocks with hammers. So Ringing Rock is a 7-acre field of 10-foot deep iron-rich boulders. The rocks all look the same, but about a third of them ring like hollow bells when they're struck or hit against each other. Sound, including bells, has been used for centuries to clear stagnant or negative energy from physical spaces. So that is where I sort of started my ritual. The second ritual site was alongside the Delaware Canal with the river and New Jersey in the background. So I started by taking the 5 pieces of slate that I had screen printed on, and I wrapped them in the dyed piece of lace that I had worn at Ringing Rock. I then dragged the bundle back and forth along the same path that the mules would have used to pull their boats. A little bit further up the river, closer to where the train intersects with the canal, I lit some candles and I drew a protective sigil that I had created onto the palms of my hands. And I started smashing the slate with the hammer that I had used at Ringing Rock. Now they sort of only exist as these beautiful little shards. I also set up a small altar where I placed a coal adorned candle and my coal mule souvenir. The third site of the ritual was the C.K. Williams Quarry, where Eastonite is found. So I created a protective circle of coal pieces around myself, and then I buried the 3 pieces of Eastonite I had purchased, and then I sprinkled native aster seeds around myself and then watered them with the water I had taken from the canal. The third and final part of the project is a 54-page book of research images, text, personal writing, and a few stills from the ritual that is risograph printed and foiled and spiral bound. The cover is screen printed with the ink that I made from the hand ground coal, and the book I printed in a limited edition of 15.